Mr. Barron was producing only for the Vancouver Island Compassion Society. At the time of the arrest, he had about 15 different strains in production. He had about 50 different strains, 50 different genetics that he was sustaining in mother plant form. Cannabis is grown like a lot of plants, apples for example, not traditionally by seed but by clones so that you preserve the genetic typing of the particular strain, and so you keep what are called mother plants that you can take cuttings from. So he had about 50 different strains, plus a hemp placebo that he was growing at the production facility, all for the use of the members of the VIX. He was being paid, I think, $30,000 a year on a salary basis to produce the cannabis, which is obviously significantly less than he could have earned on the black market. And one of the things that Mr. Leung talked about that was really tragic in the arrest is that they lost all of those genetics. And therefore they lost the ability to continue the research that was ongoing about which strains worked well for which symptoms, because of course the police destroyed all the plants. And so you have a situation where not only...
Without notifying Mr. Barron?
Sorry?
The CDSC still applies to Mr. Barron.
Absolutely.
So how come he was never informed of they were destroying his property?
Well, when the police raid and arrest you, they tend to chop down all the plants before they leave the premises.
Well, it's not in the bill, but that's probably for debate for another day.
The situation is, obviously now, you've heard Mr. Lucas say they have 6 suppliers. So now they have growing production facilities in a number of different locations as opposed to one location, one provider, easy oversight, easy monitoring, all organic. It's now diversified.
I think that's the wrong direction.
For the 5 years prior to the raid, we've been trying to develop strains that were specific to certain symptomology, and one strain in particular that we were working on was to address chronic pain, which, as Mr. Leung and I can attest, is one of the single biggest factors in terms of symptoms, if not primary condition, that people see us with.
The chronic pain there.
Yeah. The only reason I mention it is that we lost, as Mr. Tousaw suggests, all of that research in one afternoon. It's literally the equivalent of someone going in your room while you're here today, going in your office and taking all of your equipment, all of your files, everything that you've worked on, and for it to disappear, not for a month, not for a year, but forever. And so it was 5 years of research and 5 years of genetics that were gone. And as he also suggested, we were growing and were charged with, ultimately, growing non-psychoactive hemp. We were growing hemp because we actually had approved and had ethics approval to do a double-blind clinical trial on smoked cannabis and chronic pain. And we needed a hemp placebo in order to do that double-blind so that people wouldn't know if they were smoking hemp or smoking a high THC strain of cannabis. And ironically, those plants showed up in the charges as well. It's also worth noting we were growing some of Health Canada strains so that we could see if we could do a better job than Health Canada, or at least see how it turned out. And so we were actually growing some of Health Canada's cannabis as well. Yeah.
Chronic pain.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks.
Chronic pain is probably Mrs. Berlin will probably be able to answer, but of course both Mr. Luca and Leung can also jump in. The chronic pain area of symptom is it covered by the MMAR, which is the Medical Marijuana Access Regulation?
Yes, when you look at the MMAR, there are 2 columns. One are like the diseases and then the associated symptoms.
That's it.
And for HIV, I believe that pain is under there, but also...
Wait. You know a lot about your subject, but we don't. So when you're saying, first someone needs to be identified through a disease and then go into the symptom zone.
I wouldn't say it's an either or. It's both at the same time.
Both.
So if you are a person...
1 plus.
Yeah. If you're a person living with HIV, there are many symptoms associated with HIV, pain being one of them. If you're a person with severe arthritis, and of course the symptom associated with that is pain. Yes, lots of grandmothers enjoy that.
So, I want to go back to...
I left you my card, I believe.
Sorry.
If there's one symptom most Canadians understand is pain.
Yes.
So chronic pain is what compared to pain?
Oh, chronic...
Yeah, chronic pain is pain that's not relieved by traditional, that doesn't respond well to traditional treatments. It's associated with a number of conditions, often, as Madame Belle-Isle said, neuropathic pain. So people with MS, people who suffer a neuropathy through conditions like fibromyalgia and through HIV/AIDS suffer from chronic pain.
Those diseases are all covered by the MMAR.
They're
Why
covered
Canadians are not going through the MMAR?
The one caveat I'd suggest is if you've got HIV/AIDS or MS and you're suffering from chronic pain, you're in Category 1, and you can get into the program with a simple doctor's recommendation. There's a Category 2 that sets up a slightly higher hoop to jump through, which is that you also need the consent of a specialist, which is why with myself with hepatitis C, I mentioned my gastroenterologist has to be in support of my use of cannabis as well as and/or my general practitioner.
Can I clarify, though, that the program no longer requires a signature of that said specialist. The physician that signs the form just has to say that he or she has consulted with a specialist. So, just to make sure.
One final question. Yes. Tousaw, you keep talking about an amendment that we could. Do you have any suggestion?
I will provide that electronically, and I'm happy to do that. I have several suggested potential amendments that might ameliorate some of the negative consequences of this bill.
How fast can you do that?
Yes, anything we're going to produce has to be produced very fast.
Okay, good.
It'll happen this evening.
Thank you very much.
And if I could just add to the, I don't want to create more confusion about the MMAR, but let's be clear about something. If you suffer from chronic pain as a result of arthritis, your general practitioner can sign your application forms and you don't need to consult with a physician. If you suffer from chronic pain as a result of migraines, you're in a different category. You must see your general practitioner. You must also consult with a specialist. And your specialist has to make certain, your physician has to make certain declarations about that consultation. So it is a mixed bag of symptoms. The end of the day is that you can obtain medical marijuana in this country provided you have physician support for any condition and any symptom, as long as you are able to jump through the hoops that have been put up by the federal government. So theoretically, you could obtain medical marijuana for stubbing your toe and the pain associated with that if your general practitioner and a specialist are going to support that. Of course, we see from the testimony that they don't even support applications for HIV/AIDS, so it's pretty clear that that's not going to occur. But I wanted to be clear about the breakdown of the two categories.
Okay, Senator Campbell, if you don't mind, Senator Olivier has not put a question yet, and he would like to. Senator Olivier.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to congratulate you. I was very impressed by the quality of your presentations, and I must say that I do share the view of Senator Campbell and other. I don't think that this bill is anything other than a political ploy, and the consequences will be very serious for our legal system. You said to Senator Nolan, who was preparing some amendments, I would be interested, since there's already a certain amount of vagueness, since legally speaking you are liable to prosecution, what would be changing legally is that the sentences will be stricter, there will be a greater danger. The sentences will be more severe, greater danger for people who work for you. But insofar as there is no definite status for compassion clubs at the present time, how would we be able to make an exception within the framework of this bill in order to protect such groups? And my second question is, and I suppose that this is something that you've already looked into, groups such as yours who are involved in such remarkable social work. How is it that you haven't been successful in obtaining a legal status that would certainly solve many of the legal difficulties?
Mr. Tousaw?
I wish I knew the answer to the second question. I can tell you that various courts that have considered the constitutionality of the medical marijuana access regulations have urged the government to look carefully at the issue of regulating what the courts have called the network of unlicensed suppliers that are traditionally supplying medical marijuana users. For instance, the Court of Appeal in Ontario in a case called Hitzig versus Canada, which struck portions of the MMAR, said to the federal government, look, when you go back to the drawing board, you really ought to consider licensing these compassion clubs. Now, the government chose not to do that, and I think with tragic consequences.